Today I'm going to talk about a show that quite a few of you have probably never heard about. It's called Misfits. It's basically a superhero comedy that came up for the superhero craze of the 2010s, and it is surprisingly excellent and still holds up really well. Well, I say it holds up well for me. For you, it could be a completely different story, and there are a few elements of the show that could end up triggering a few people online, especially as two characters in particular have rather controversial powers, and of course this is a comedy, and comedy is subjective, so whilst I laughed at this show, you might not. Fortunately, there is more to this show than comedy, but that is far and away the show's most identifiable genre. So what is the story of Misfits? Well, it's about 5 delinquents who are all doing community service together. Then, in a crazy storm or something, they all get electrocuted and develop superpowers. So basically, it's the same story concept as the first season of The Flash, except this time, it's funny. And just like how The Flash had to fight a villain a week, so do our heroes. Who are the heroes of this show? Well, firstly, there's the best character in the show, Nathan Young, a character who I'm sure at least a few people recognised as being played by Robert Sheehan. Robert Sheehan is a fantastic actor and is often a standout of any production that he appears in. Most notably Netflix's The Umbrella Academy, where he plays arguably the best character. Side rant about The Umbrella Academy because I can't be bothered to actually do a video on the show because I don't care enough. The Umbrella Academy is such an okay show. It's fun enough, but it's a show where they keep recycling the same story to the point that there's no longer stakes. The team has had to save the world 3 times now and has only succeeded once. I can't wait for the 4th and final season to have our heroes valiantly race against time to save the world from a problem that they once again caused, although I do really like Klaus and 5. And also Ben, but only season 1 and 2 Ben. Anyway, from a show that I actually think deserves to be called mid, a word that I don't actually like, back to an excellent one. As I was saying, Nathan is an excellent character. He's funny and charming with all the best jokes being delivered by him. He often comes across as attention-seeking and narcissistic, and is one of those characters that you love to watch but you know for a fact that you would despise in real life. However, there is also a kindness within him. He seems to be genuinely concerned at times for the other Misfits, and I like how his relationship develops with both Kelly and Barry. Mild spoilers here, but Misfits is one of the shows where the main cast in the first season is completely different to the main cast in the final season. There is not a single actor who stays on this show for its entire run. I won't spoil why, and they don't all leave at the same time, but Nathan is the first to go. I will speak about how people aren't as fond of the later seasons as they are of the first 3, and I will give my own personal opinions on all the seasons of Misfits, but I do think that out of all the characters, it's Nathan's absence you miss the most. I don't know if it's as bad as Michael leaving the office, but there is a certain spark that's missing once Nathan leaves, and I think Misfits was never able to truly recover from that. Now, some of you may be thinking that Nathan is the main character of Misfits, especially with the Michael Scott comparison, but no, the actual main character is Simon, played by Ewan Ryan. Now, if you've watched Game of Thrones like I know you have, then you should recognise this guy as Ramsay Bolton. Now, Ramsay is often considered to be a tragic hero in Game of Thrones, and lots of fans were able to recognise Ramsay as the misunderstood, idyllic man that he was, and none of this would have been conveyed so perfectly to the audience without Ewan Ryan's perfect performance. Like Robert Sheehan, he's a fantastic actor, and it's no surprise that the two of them were the 2 actors whose careers got catapulted the most off of Misfits. Now, this may seem crazy to anyone who has seen Game of Thrones, but originally the writers planned for Simon to become the big bad of Misfits that the others would have to work together to kill. I know, don't know what they are thinking there. Ewan is a great actor, but I just don't see him as a villain. Fortunately, they preferred the direction that Ewan actually went with the character, and I'm glad that they did too, because Simon receives the best character development of anyone in Misfits. He starts out the show as a very shy, very borderline creepy character, and there are moments here and there where you can see the original villainous seeds being sown in his character. The other Misfits initially pick on him for his awkwardness, and I like that the show gave him a very thematic ability. All the Misfits receive powers that thematically suit their character. I won't spoil Nathan's, since that one has a cool reveal, and some of the other powers aren't as cool or relevant, so no promises that I'll talk about theirs. However, Simon's power is perfect. He has the ability to turn invisible, because no one can see him. Huh? Yeah, this show is smarter than some will give it credit for, and dumb enough to make you laugh. Simon changes quite a lot over the course of his run on the show, as he becomes more and more confident and starts to become comfortable around the other Misfits, even occasionally getting a leg up over the others at times. I liked how his friendship developed with Nathan, and whilst I wasn't initially convinced, I did really enjoy his relationship with Alicia. Speaking of Alicia, she's the character that grew on me the most. By the way, she's one of the characters with the controversial power I mentioned earlier, so I won't spoil it. The power is controversial mainly for how Alicia uses it, although the show does at least attempt to handle the issue with some of the characters calling her out. Personally, her power didn't bother me, but how you respond to it is down to you. Anyway, onto her actual character. Season 1 Alicia sucks. She's probably the worst character in Season 1. Like I said, she grew on me, but she had a lot of growth to make, mainly because she was just kind of boring. This links to her power, but everything about her was to do with sex. This is a problem I have with this show, and something that I mentioned in my sex scenes suck video, which you probably haven't seen because it got age restricted, but I don't like sex scenes, and Misfits has a lot of them. Misfits get a little bit of a pass because sometimes the sex is funny, especially when it's Nathan, but most of the time it's just an unnecessary sex scene. Alicia in Season 1 is just sex crazy. It's all she talks about, and most of her jokes are about sex, which made her extremely one note. Fortunately, the writers recognised this flaw in her character and actually took the time to develop her. It was a fantastic decision to pair her up with Simon, and I love that the writers built the two characters up together, and it was great to see Alicia become an actual three-dimensional character. At first, I didn't care for her at all, with every character outshining her, but in the end, her and Simon received arguably the best storyline in Misfits, and now I love her character. Kelly was a good enough character. I didn't really care about her too much either way. She definitely got some good standout moments, and I enjoyed her whenever she was on screen, but overall, if I was to rank all the characters in Misfits, then I'd probably have her in the middle of the pack. Likewise would be Curtis, the character who stays on the show the longest out of all the actors. Curtis was initially paired with Alicia in Season 1, and because of that I feel like he missed out on a lot of the show's best moments in the show's first season. Although I really do think the first season episode, which was dedicated to him, is by far one of the show's finest and most memorable episodes. And whilst I think the show never really knew what to do with Curtis, this episode did set up his character really well and fleshed him out. He was by no means a bad character, but I think some of the other initial characters, as well as some of the later ones, were much more interesting. However, due to him being around the longest, I did care about him, and I believe that his exit from the show was the one that upset me the most. Whilst not a character from the first series, I really did like Rudy and consider him to be part of the show's better seasons, as he is introduced in Season 3. Joseph Gilgan has to play two different characters on this show, as Rudy's power is one where it can split into two different people. One is quite rude and the other is a lot more polite, almost as if they have a childish innocence. Rudy essentially picks up where Nathan leaves off and ends up being one of the show's best characters. He also, after being introduced, sticks around to the end of the show. His character is given more complexities the longer he sticks around, mainly due to his literal split personality, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was the writer's favourite character for the final two seasons. Rudy was a joy to watch, and it's no surprise that Joseph Gilgan has found similar success to Robert Sheehan and Ewan Ryan, as he showed up in Preacher, which is another show that I want to talk about. However, unlike The Umbrella Academy, I feel like I actually have a fair bit to talk about when it comes to Preacher, so I might save that for an actual video. Anyway, Rudy is an excellent character, and in my opinion, it's him who mostly carries the show's last two seasons. Now, before I talk about the last two seasons and the characters introducing them, I want to just briefly reflect on the show's amazing first three seasons. Season 1 and 2 are just magnificent, and so is the Christmas special. Season 3 might feel a little weaker to some due to a development involving the show's best character, but I feel like it still stands tall as an excellent season of television. All three are hilarious, and at times the show can be quite challenging. By challenging, I don't mean that the show was upsetting or made me cry, because it never came close to that, nor did it ever really try to. What I actually mean is that the show could be quite dark and mature, and it really made these, in some cases wacky characters, feel very human and real. This is the primary reason why I think Misfits clicks so well with people, because it's all well and good when you can laugh at characters, but when a character makes you care about them, that's when you'll love a show. The first three seasons featured the better episodes in my opinion, such as the aforementioned Curtis-centric episode, the episode where the powers get reversed, and of course the episode where they fight a guy who can control milk. Now some of you may think the milk controlling episode is probably really good because it's a funny episode, but no. This episode is one of the darkest in the entire show, and that's what makes it so incredible, and in my opinion, the show's best. Now that I've declared my love for Misfits Season 1 to 3, let's talk about Seasons 4 and 5. A lot of people really don't like Seasons 4 and 5 because they are objectively weaker seasons and feature objectively less interesting characters. However, I actually really like Misfits' last two seasons. Yeah, they're not as good or memorable as the first three, but they are carried by how good Rudy is, and some of the episodes are still really fun and have some great and dark moments. For the shortcomings of Season 4 and 5, it still felt like Misfits to me, so how do the characters compare? Well, let's start with the worst main character in all of Misfits, Abby. I have very little to say about Abby. She's basically just a worse version of Alicia from season 1. And by worst, I mean as in she's just Alicia, but if Alicia had absolutely no personality and was just sex jokes every now and then. She exemplifies everything wrong with the 4th and 5th season. However, there is nothing wrong with the actress, and she was really good in Peaky Blinders. Jess was a character I didn't care about at all. She was, and sorry to repeat myself, just a weaker version of Alicia. Fortunately, not season 1 Alicia, just normal, regular Alicia. She's just not particularly memorable, and her relationship with Rudy felt like a far less interesting retread of Simon and Alicia's. Finn was fine. He was enjoyable. I liked him as a character, not as good as any of the original cast though, sadly. The same cannot be said for Alex. Alex is the best character Misfits introduced in Season 4, and in a show where most of the characters feel very wacky and attention-seeking, the most normal one actually ended up standing out. I liked Alex for this very reason. He actually felt real. He was a character that actually felt unique instead of someone made to recapture the spirit of the previous characters, and I think everything about him was well done, although he is the other character with the controversial power. This one's probably a lot more controversial than Alicia's, but again, it didn't bother me, but it might bother you. Misfits is a fantastic British comedy and a unique one, especially with its mild superhero spin. In terms of visuals, it hasn't aged the best, but it's still funny now, and I still love the characters. It's also, as I said, a British comedy, so it's not that long and easily digestible. You could watch the first 2 seasons in a day with ease. This is not some American comedy that goes on for all eternity and runs out of steam. This is a much more concise British comedy that starts to run out of steam 3/5 of the way through, but still has enough left in the tank for the final 2/5 to remain worth watching. At least in my opinion. Do yourself a favour and receive a blast from the not-so-distant past, courtesy of Misfits. Trust me guys, it's pretty good.